It's Sunday in Mexico City, now the most populous city in the world. The crowds pour out, all of them in their own way, intent on a holiday. Families go to Chapultepec Park, alone together for a time. They celebrate the present moment, even as it passes. The future is already here, playing in the park. Half of Mexico's population is children. A birthday party marks another milestone, one more year achieved. Grown up, this child and his friends will share their city with more than 30 million people. What will there be to share? This year, more than 80 million children will join the ranks of humanity, and every year the number grows. Most of the children will be born in developing countries, already struggling to meet their people's basic needs. We are 4.5 billion now. By the year 2000, the count could be 6 billion. Every human being has a stake in this planet's future. Since the World Population Conference in Bucharest in 1974, population control has been an international priority. Without it, what kind of world will our children inherit? Our population problem has been a long time coming. Developing agriculture in the Near East fueled the first known population explosion. The world that Alexander the Great conquered had about the same number of people as Brazil has today. In the 4th century BC, global population was 100 million. In the next 1,000 years, population growth took place chiefly in Europe, North Africa, and Asia. As the Han dynasty declined in the east, and in the west the Roman Empire began to crumble, around 200 AD, world population reached about 190 million. By the 10th century, medieval Europe was expanding rapidly in culture, technology, and population. During the same period in China, the first 100 years of the Sung dynasty was a time of remarkable growth. As Marco Polo brought East and West together around 1300 AD, world population stood at 360 million. New horizons began to open up as the traders of Europe grew strong. During the 18th century, better living conditions and more effective medicine produced a rapid growth in numbers. By 1800, there were 1 billion human beings spread across the New World and the Old. It took 4 million years to produce that first billion. But numbers have their own imperative. And during the Industrial Revolution, population growth accelerated like almost everything else. The second billion took a little more than a century. It was reached by 1930. The third billion took 30 years, reached in 1960. 15 years to 1975 brought the fourth billion. By the year 2000, there will be 6 billion people in the world.
Il y aura donc 2 milliards d'êtres humains nouveaux.
Thus, there will be 2 billion new human beings. What is interesting to point out, or to bear in mind, however, is that 90% of these 2 billion will be born in third world countries.
Le déséquilibre entre le tiers-monde et le monde industrialisé.
The imbalance between the third world and the industrialized world, the rich world, will be still more marked and more dangerous, particularly in view of the fact that in the meantime the majority of the industrialized countries will age. There will be fewer births and more old people.
Ce que je vois personnellement, c'est qu'il y aura, si cette politique Nord-Sud.
The way I view it personally is that if this North-South policy continues, I will see a little island of prosperity surrounded by an ocean of wretchedness, rancor, and injustice.
Donc les perspectives de l'an 2000 ne sont pas très rassurantes.
The prospects for the year 2000 are not very reassuring. There are certainties regarding demographic currents, and there are question marks in the area of human generosity and politics. Our future darkens as our numbers grow. Poverty and disease threaten the human race. By the year 2000, more than 600 million people will be seriously malnourished. Starvation cannot be avoided. In question now is the extent of the suffering. Food production will grow less than demand, even if modern technology spreads quickly around the world. But if world agriculture is not modernized, 65 developing countries will be unable to feed their own populations by the end of the century. The need for productive land will become critical. As our numbers grow, the earth fails and deserts grow larger. In a very few years, more than 3 billion people will live in cities, many of them in vast polluted slums. And most of the biggest cities will be in developing countries, a world of shanty towns that stretch to the horizon. Education systems cannot expand fast enough to meet the needs of the coming generation. Development for individuals as well as nations is held back by our species' talent for fertility. Young people will make up almost half the developing world's numbers. Their employment will require a massive economic expansion. As demands for energy increase, so will the potential for environmental damage. The year 2000, it is a catalogue of crises. But the pattern of the future can be changed. Most developing countries have begun to shape their population trends. 6 million people live in Tunisia. Half are under 21. But this population is growing much more slowly now, after 20 years of government action. Women are the key to this success. Over the years, they have gained new freedoms. Legislation has raised the age of marriage, outlawed polygamy, and given them equal rights with men in divorce. Three generations of women in this family bear witness to the revolution that has taken place in Tunisia. The grandmother wears the clothing of her era. Most of her life has been governed by the customs of the past. She was married at 14 and had no education at all. Her daughter-in-law, Saida, completed 6 years of primary school. Her children will finish secondary school and perhaps go on to university, the girls as well as the boy. 3 generations agree. The new ways are better.
Now there is family planning, which is good. And now the little boys and girls live. My daughter-in-law had 3 children. I had 7 boys and 3 girls. Before we had no family planning. Things have changed. My mother had 7 boys. I have only 3 children. They are well fed and well clothed. If you have too many children, you really cannot give them a good education.
أنا نحب نعيش تجربة خير من اللي عاشتها أمي وجدي كي مثلا نحب مستقبل زاهر عندي نحب
I want to have a better life than my mother and grandmother.
مثلا دكتورة ولا صحفية مثلا
I want to finish my education, to become somebody, perhaps a doctor or a journalist, somebody working for society.
أمي وجدي
If I have children, I want to have only 1 or 2, so that I can give them a good upbringing and so that they can have as good a life as I am having.
Education is central to Amel's good life. She is 14, in her 4th year at secondary school. Today, in natural science class, she studies human reproduction.
L'appareil reproducteur, c'est ce qui est représenté en rouge. Vous avez là une petite
The
poche.
subject is taught in Tunisian schools to mixed groups of teenage girls and boys. It's part of the government's population policy, giving its people the power to control their own fertility.
L'oviduct, c'est-à-dire qui va conduire.
Family planning is growing in Tunisia. Free clinics provide birth control services in the larger cities. Saida waits her turn to see the doctor. Since the birth of her son, she and her husband have decided to have no more children. Regular checkups here protect her from side effects as she makes the transition from an IUD to pills. They are widely available now in pharmacies across the country, and their cost is subsidized by the government. Where the people can't come to the clinic comes to them, in towns and villages scattered throughout the Tunisian countryside. This new mobile clinic is equipped as a dispensary, an examining room, and even for surgery. Suad is the motivator. She makes contact with the village women, translating medical technology and family planning policy into the daily reality of their lives. Many of these women come regularly to meet the clinic mobile. But today, there's a newcomer. This young mother wants to delay the birth of her next child. Suad explains the choices available to her and sends her to the clinic for a consultation with the midwife. Traditionally, the midwife is a person of great authority in rural life, wise in the ways of fertility. For village women, she has always been the source of information and advice. And these days, they learn from her how to plan their families. The midwife is the paramedic on the team. Here in the clinic mobile, she inserts an IUD, first making the necessary measurements. IUDs can remain in place for more than 2 years. They are one of the most popular means of contraception among rural women. Hundreds of family planning teams are working in the villages of Tunisia. Only a few so far are equipped with clinic mobiles. But the impact has been great, and the network is growing. No village is too small for regular visits from the team. As they arrive, the horn proclaims the greatest of all the new freedoms for Tunisian women. They've been waiting for it. The population program brings them a chance to shed a crippling burden. Yearly childbirth, huge families, and hungry children, endured with patient resignation for so long. Thailand, and children's voices singing. But this is no ordinary nursery rhyme. It's a song about the hunger of too many children and the new ways to prevent this. Songs like these are part of one of the world's most successful population programs. Condoms carry the message. Certificates for free sterilization fly off in the cause of smaller families. It's a remarkably public affair, and that's one reason for its success. T-shirts carry the family planning symbol. The buffalo's a walking billboard. The slogan reads, "I use condoms." 39% of married women in their childbearing years use contraception here. The number has quadrupled during the 70s. Wherever the ordinary needs of life are serviced, contraceptives can be found. Local hairdressers sell a month's supply of pills, and with it give a discount on a haircut. The population growth rate here was once among the highest in the world. But in the last decade, it has dropped dramatically. An innovative program has found wide public acceptance. Taxi drivers in Bangkok are part of the supply side too. They sell pills and condoms to their passengers, or refer them to the city clinic for sterilization. Where 20 or more employees want vasectomies, the doctor and the operating room drive over and do the operation there and then. It's a quick and simple matter, done in a few minutes. And in Thailand, it's a means of birth control that's gaining in popularity. The population program here has reached even the most isolated of the country's minority groups. 250,000 hill people live in remote villages in the northern highlands. They have their own language and a deeply traditional way of life. But even here, women are starting to limit their families. These women have walked out of the hills to a regional clinic to be sterilized. It's been a 2-day journey into the unfamiliar world of modern medicine. Thailand's success in reducing its birth rate stems from the unique qualities of its people. Their tradition is one of independence and free choice, and the power to choose their own fertility can only strengthen that tradition. In Mexico City, quite different problems face the population planners. There are 70 million Mexicans now, and more than 16 million of them live in Mexico City. The traditional way of life here does not favor fertility control, particularly the cult of machismo, or male dominance. But the government has promoted family planning as crucial to public health, and the birth rate is dropping. In poorer areas of Mexico City, health centers provide free medical services, and family planning is part of the program. The television show explains how smaller, well-spaced families have better lives. Here, like everywhere else, a better understanding of human reproduction is the beginning of fertility control.
Esto lo hemos sabido siempre. De los seres humanos nacerán seres humanos. El maíz dará maíz, el trigo, trigo.
In Mexico today, more than 30 million children are growing to maturity. When their fertility begins, without contraception, the size of the next generation could strain the country's resources to the limit.
Cada espermatozoide.
¿Sí? Esta T de cobre se encuentra en su vagina.
Every doctor in the clinic has special training in family planning. He's ready to respond to any question that comes up while he treats the medical problem that brought the patient to the clinic. This integration of family planning with general health care is central to the population control program in Mexico.
When Mexico went to the Bucharest conference, the law had been passed for this program and creating the National Population Council to coordinate all the activity of the government with cooperation from the private sector. And furthermore, a constitutional reform was passed that clearly states the right of the individual to the number and spacing of his children. Therefore, Mexico has been able to implement a well-coordinated program, which is probably one of the most successful in the world at this moment, which clearly points in the direction of a decline in the population growth rate for the next 15 years, with the actual target of reaching a total population of 100 million or so by the end of the century. If nothing had been done, or if the population growth decline had been left to sort of natural factors without a government program, then the estimates were in the range of 130 million.
A decade ago, Mexico had one of the world's highest growth rates, 3.4% per year. Today, the rate of growth is 2.4%, and the goal for the year 2000 is 1% a year. Reaching this goal means penetrating deep into the Mexican hinterland. And here, the familiar figure of the midwife is the key. With new training, she helps to limit births as well as oversee them.
Buenas tardes, Gloria. Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias a usted. Pues yo bien.
This family has 4 children already. A 5th is on its way. They have no land, and food is very short. The problem is common enough, but now there's some help, and it's available to everyone in the village.
Mira, Goya, quiero que me platiques alguna pregunta que me quieras hacer. Pregúntame algo de lo que dudes. Bueno, porque dicen que el sistema de la... Entonces,
the next baby will be born in a regional clinic, and while she's there, the mother has decided to be sterilized. Pictures help the midwife to explain the operation and its consequences. Life without land will never be an easy matter, but at least this mother's problems will stop multiplying. In rural Mexico, health care has been hard to get. Child mortality rates are high, and poor nutrition fosters disease. But things are changing. This town of 600 people recently built a health center to house a mother and baby health care program. Family planning information and supplies are provided here. It's part of a new government drive to improve medical services in small communities. In Mexico and around the world, the effort is paying off. National programs and the work of organizations such as the United Nations Fund for Population Activities are changing the lives of individuals and the prospects for the whole human race. The future is on its way. The fulfillment of its promise depends on governments around the world working to free their people from unwanted fertility. When every human birth is freely chosen, the victory is in sight. Another life begins. A different future in the making. Tomorrow's world is in our hands today.